Historically, the community was at the centre of the planning system, but now there's a very strong perception in the community that it's weighted heavily towards developers. If you're elected, what will you do to restore community confidence in the planning system? Carolyn.
To restore community confidence in the planning system, what we have to do, as well as voting for me as an independent, we have to vote the Berejiklian government out. Absolutely. Whichever party, whoever you choose, it just must be put the Liberals last in terms of their planning commitments to this community. We need to put the community at the centre of the planning process and ensure that planning decisions return to the guiding principles and objectives of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. The process must harness community knowledge and expertise about your local area and recognise your long-term commitment to this area and to the neighbourhood and to the place that you call home and where you live. If elected, I would do everything to work with the government of the day and the crossbenchers to ensure that community input into the planning process is considered and respected and seen to be so, and to ensure that the current LEP reviews and strategic planning undertaken at a local level includes authentic, considered community participation. Thank you.
And Richard?
One of the things that I didn't mention in my opening words that professionally I'm a teacher, and one of the biggest issues facing education these days is amongst students is the sedentary nature of student activity and the amount of time students spend on screens, gaming on screens rather than gaming outside on playgrounds, grassed areas, open spaces. And I think one of the big issues that we're facing in this state, and particularly in this city, is the lack of open space that is included in a lot of these big development proposals and planning precincts. We need to make sure that we are setting up an environment for the future of our children. An environment where they're going to run around, get outside, kick a ball, rather than be locked up in high-rise apartments, a Manhattanisation, if you like, of our city, so that we're actually moving towards creating an environment for kids that makes them more sedentary. And I think we need to spend a lot more effort in our planning to make sure that the open spaces are provided for the community and for the increased population that is inevitably coming our way.
So look, I think I've really already shared with you two of the main points. The plan to scrap all these planned precincts is a big step in empowering local communities again, stopping developers from being able to make spot rezonings. And there's another one. As of last Sunday, the Labor Party announced that we will not proceed with the medium density housing code. This was a shameful code that basically would change all low density areas by stealth. To have areas like we have here, to be able to build manor homes and terraces and townhouses among single dwelling residences was just inappropriate. And look, medium density has its place and it's definitely the missing middle. But what I'm saying here is I believe it's best for a local council to decide where that medium density goes. We know two things about medium and high density. It shouldn't go near bushland and it shouldn't go near waterways, because high density and even medium density development on waterways and bushlands affects the health of those areas. So that's why it's important to leave it to local councils to decide where they'll put low density, medium density and high density. And I think they're the three biggest things a potential government in an alternative of a Labor government can do to restore faith back to our planning system. Thank you.
Now this is a particular issue now for us in St Leonards Crowsnest, because in the latest plan the government has put out, Crowsnest St Leonards is expected to take 100% increase in population by 2036, and that compares with just 36% for Greater Sydney if the current plans go ahead the government's proposing. So do you support a population increase of this scale in this area? And if you don't, what will you do about it if you're elected?
Well, Genia, to answer that question, no, I don't support it. And of course, population increases can only occur if the residential housing stock is provided to allow that population increase in a particular spot to occur, which goes back to the point I made earlier. If we're going to get a 100% increase in population in that area, the St Leonards Crow's Nest area, then we need a 100% increase in open space, public open space. The numbers just don't stack up. We all know that. So we need to make sure that there is a much greater emphasis placed on providing that balance. Now, whilst I understand the demands of Sydney's projected population increase, I strongly disagree with the model of the priority precincts that the government is using at the moment. Personally, I would be focusing on things like high-speed transport out of the city, where you can have nodes of medium density or villages between Sydney and Goulburn, for example. I think the whole vision about Sydney needs to be changed. We need to adopt a more European thinking, I believe, to make sure that our population is a little bit more diverse and spread out beyond the metropolitan area. We need to avoid the Manhattanisation of our area.
Put simply, no. Just like Richard, no, I would not support a population increase of that scale because it's simply not sustainable. In fact, it's completely and totally unworkable. It is not acceptable or sustainable because infrastructure, specifically in that Crow's Nest St Leonards area, but also across the entire North Shore, is already not keeping up. We have North Shore Hospital already at overcapacity. I was talking to a doctor just the other day and said even with the Northern Beaches Council, North Shore Hospital is at overcapacity. We've got overcrowded schools and an ever-growing need for more green space and sporting fields. This level of overdevelopment proposed will seriously impact on personal general well-being and health. I have concerns for young people, for elderly, for that would be locked up or kept in those secure high-rise buildings with very little amenity. It's just a disaster in terms of wellness and keeping our mental health and our physical health well and in keeping us from a situation of feeling isolated and having extra anxiety. I agree with Richard. If elected, I would be calling on the government to really be looking at decentralisation policies, to be looking at fast speed transport nodes out of Sydney and to put our population around the whole of the state, to look at those great regional areas that could really do with a boost in population and working, and I think that there is a real opportunity here to put the focus onto the rest and decentralise. Thank you.
Absolutely not. It's too large an increase. And I've said to many people, Lane Cove Council's dealing with an area called St Leonards South, and I'll make it very clear, in the current form, it's definitely something I would not want to put my name to as a councillor. What I'll be calling for is an evidence-based approach as to how we set housing targets. To give you an example, North Sydney, if we look at current housing targets for each council area relative to the land size of that area, North Sydney has, under the current targets, 275 new dwellings per square kilometre. Lane Cove has 173 new dwellings per square kilometre, and Gladys may have done something for her own electorate, 54 new dwellings per square kilometre. Now, this is the problem. What we have at the moment is there is no evidence. No one knows how the housing targets have been created for Sydney. So what I'm saying here is we just need an evidence-based approach. One thing I hear very clearly is people understand as a growing city, we are going to have growth and development. But when we don't understand why areas are chosen or how, that's how we have mistrust of the system. And ultimately, I think that's what we need to do, and I think it's planning again ahead for the future. And it's a belief that the public service, and I fundamentally believe that governments can provide services for people, and we've got to stop this notion that we need to privatise and outsource all functions of government, because I think that's what We're suffering right here. It's ironic that the Roads and Maritime Service does not employ one road engineer anymore. It's all consulted out. You know, that is an abysmal situation that this government has put us in, that really government has lost its ability to play for its people, and we need to rebuild a public service, and as a community have faith that the government is here for us as the people and can provide great services for us as a people. Thank you.